Yeah, no. Right, question of the day.
And what is the question of the day? Maybe that's the question.
How do we know what questions to ask? Should we just start there?
Could be. Give me one sec.
It's gonna be-
Was the question about what was the question? So I'm pretty lost at this point, to be totally honest.
G'day, welcome. We would love to have had a question prepared for today. As it happened, sometimes we don't always have questions. So we just started. We don't know where it's going, and this was the result. So I hope you enjoy. How do we know what questions to ask?
Yeah.
Because the reason I say that is because oftentimes it feels like we're trying to find an answer, and we're stuck because we can't find the answer that we're looking for. The answer is the quality of the question, but how do we improve the quality of that question?
That's fair, because I think sometimes we ask questions for the sake of asking a question, and it's a good point. Like sometimes there's no place for a question. There's just action, and then the questions and the answers kind of open up with the action. I don't know.
How do you ask better questions? What process do you go through?
The first thing that comes to mind is it's something I heard a long time ago. I don't remember where, but it was like we always talk about wanting like a mentor or somebody to tell us what to do, but most of the time, if we ask ourselves, well, what would they actually tell me to do right now? We already know, we're just avoiding doing it. And it's most of the time it's the thing we don't want to do. So that's good. So the first thing is like, what might I be avoiding? There's a good question that I actually put in I made a repeating Google task a long time ago that asked me like once a week, am I inventing things to do to avoid the important? And the funny thing is, a lot of times I'll see it when I've pulled down my drop down menu on my phone, and it'll be one of the things, and I realize I pulled down my drop down just to avoid doing something else and to check stuff I could swipe off. And I'm like, oh shit. Yeah, I'm totally avoiding stuff.
Yeah. I like that.
That's an old Tim Ferriss hack. Am I inventing things to do to avoid the important?
Yeah, right. And then what do you do when you catch yourself inventing things? What's the next thing you do after that?
Yeah, so the next thing is to realize, okay, so then look at the thing, because it pretty quickly exposes the thing that the important thing, right? Like it's pretty plain at that point. And so then asking myself why I'm trying so hard to avoid it. And sometimes it's because I actually need rest. And so if that's the case, paradoxically, the most important thing is rest. So like I'm inventing things to do to avoid resting because I feel like I have to complete tasks in order to be efficient or successful or feel like I'm doing stuff. Asking. So once I've determined what the important thing is, asking why I'm avoiding it, and seeing if it might just be time for rest, and or otherwise it's just that I need to lock in and focus better. And in that case, pretty straightforward. What about you? What do you? How would you approach that, or what questions do you find yourself asking?
What questions do I find myself asking? What was the question? I was thinking about productivity hacks.
So am I inventing things to do to avoid the important?
Look, I know this is an important question. Maybe I'm inventing something right now. What was the question? What a great episode. Yeah. Do you remember? I've lost my train of thought.
No, all I remember is we were asking what was the question, and you're asking what was the question about what was the question. So I'm pretty lost at this point, to be totally honest.
Look, I think this is a lot like life, isn't it?
Maybe that's maybe we should start a fortune cookie line, and it should just be what was the question. That'd be our dominant fortune cookie. It's not a bad idea. Life's maybe question fortune cookie.
But I don't think we should publish this episode at this point.
I'm thinking it's great, actually, personally. Yeah, because they're keto fortune cookies. Yeah.
We'll bleep that too.
Or we
Do you
could
think we
maybe,
get caught up on asking questions? Questions because we know that answers, like if we go out and search for answers, we can't find the answers, we get stuck because we don't have a quality question. But what happens when we run out of quality questions? For example, now, right, what do we do? And then it's being comfortable, I guess. When you don't have the answer and you don't have a question, what exists in that empty space?
Good point. You actually, it's a great point because I think we sometimes ask too many questions. It's one thing to be a seeker, but it's another thing to ask too many questions. I heard it said somewhat recently that most, predominantly philosophers are out of work men, and that's fair. That's fair, because going back to something we talked about before, it's like if we're fully giving ourselves to something or to whatever is needed around us, most of the time, like there's not time for questions. Now there's always a time for reflection, but when we're in the heat of the moment or when we're in activity or in our general day to day, questions can be a luxury.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I have to remind myself that sometimes, right? Like, as someone who, maybe is guilty of asking too many questions and, trying to find answers to the deep questions, it's forgetting that really is a privilege to have the time and space and luxury to kind of go deeper and to seek that greater level of understanding. But I think that feeling of like stuckness when you just like run out, like it's not even like you could be like there's that luxury, like if you've got the time and space to be asking these questions, that's great. But then even with the time and space, it's like, man, I don't even know what to ask. Like, just here, I'm struggling, sucks, and I'm tired of asking questions. And I think I've reached that point recently, which is kind of ironic given we've created this to ask questions. But no, I think there's a point of there. Maybe this just creates structure. It's a structured space to ask questions for a specific reason. Whereas I think perhaps I've grown tired recently of almost like, torturing is a strong word, but like just sitting with all of these questions 24/7. Like, what is the meaning of this? Why does that matter? Where am I going? Like, how is that going to happen? Like, and just getting stuck in that space, and it is exhausting. And trying to understand like how do I, and maybe I've already answered that, but like maybe the answer is structure and intentionality, right? So anything, like nothing's good or bad, but without structure it can just like dominate our lives, right? Like have the snack but don't have the snack all the time. Ask questions but don't ask questions all the time.
Sure.
Does any of that make sense?
Makes total sense. I think underneath there's a really clear underlying observation, which is that for men, and again this context of men, there comes a time in our lives where the path forward or the only thing to do is to act, even if we don't have the answers that we think we need. And at that time, we do have to trust ourselves, even if we don't know that, even if we don't have a sense of knowing that we can do the thing. We just have to trust that we can do it, or at least be willing to take the step. Excuse me. It's the willingness, the courage to take the step, to take the action without all of the data. And that's a defining moment in our lives, because it's one thing to say I trust myself. It's one thing to say I believe I can do what I need to do. It's one thing to say it, all of the whatever, fill in the blank, but it's a whole nother thing when at the end of the day you jump off a cliff, you take the leap, and you do the thing without the data, because that's all that there is to be done. Right? It's like you have it to do, we do it. And then the thing is that's a repeating pattern in our lives, for sure. But I think there's definitely a culminating moment where we all face that as men, or at least again, different stages and different times. And every time it may feel entirely new. I've experienced that. because it's not like you do it once and it's ever going to be easier to take the leap. It's always going to require full dedication, full commitment, and full intention, and just full willingness, and taking the leap. Because at the end of the day, we're going to die at some point, right? We're going to die. But if we, not to be cheesy or generic, but like, did we ever live? Yeah, and that's where the line is drawn. Is if we took the leap. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Processing the fact that I'm going to die and it all is going to end. Can you think of a time like when you have had to take a leap without all of the data? Like what was going through your mind at that moment, and what did you say to yourself to be able to take the leap anyway?
Yeah, a couple of them come to mind. The first one is going into business the first time. First time I decided to go into business, and had no idea what I was doing. Still have a very limited concept of what there is to be done. But yeah, had say again?
How old were you at that time?
About 22, 23, somewhere in there. And that was a big leap, because it was like, I know I want to do things in life. Imagine that. And and that was the path. That was the way forward. I know that the things, and I had some other challenges at the same time. And so that's, again, like, we get these concepts like, I'll take this leap when I get healthy. I'll take this leap when I have financial security. I'll take this leap when I have emotional security. I'll take this leap when I have fill in the blank. But the reality is, most of the things that we want can only be achieved by first taking the leap. Yeah, so that, to answer the question, that's one that comes to mind. Another one would be selling that first business and moving in a different direction. Traveling was a big one. That was at a time when I had very, very limited finances, and just decided to go for it. But again, some of those are small examples. But
why was that last one, if I can interrupt? Like, why was that so important when you had limited finances? You had something that was building in the background. Like, it had proven itself in some capacity, right? But then you felt it important to step away from that, which felt like a leap of faith for you, a leap into the unknown. Like, tell me about that process. Like, why did you see that as being important at that time?
To clarify, you're talking about the travel?
The travel, yeah.
Yeah, the travel, for me, it was a not outlet. Outlet's not the right word. It was a path, I guess. It was a path to seeking, just generally seeking. And so it, everything within me was crying out to go explore, to seek farther in a physical space, seek farther physically. And so, and it had been there for years, since I was a kid. And so it was something I knew I needed to do, and that I wanted to do badly. So, and to be clear, it was around the same time that I was going into business for myself, similar time frame. And as you know, these things can go very slow. So, yeah, it was really, at that point, I was less concerned about the finances, because I knew I could function on pretty limited finances, as we learned to do. And so that wasn't the hard part. It was more that I had not traveled to that point. I had never been on a plane, and then I took about the longest plane flight you can take to India. And so, yeah, it was definitely a leap. But it's also metaphorical, right? Because so many of these leaps aren't something that are physical. They're more emotional or cognitive leaps that we take. Yeah, but I think sometimes, we don't have all of the data to know where to leap. So we just got to take the step that we do know we can take. Like, it may be a really small step. Sometimes the smallest steps take the biggest courage, I think, too, because it's not just that we're moving, but it's also that we're moving without quite knowing what's on the other side, but we're just going to move a little bit anyway. And that's big. But yeah, that's my take.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, it's like we share that in common, right? Like having been at a point where it's like, I know this is something that I need to do, and it's something we've never done before, and it's giving up the known, the familiar, even if it doesn't make complete sense, it's still like still leaving something that is a known quantity. And we both had that experience in our lives. And I think like what I take from that is like, yeah, sometimes it's just trusting the knowing, and that's like quite a difficult, like there isn't an answer there. There isn't clarity. There isn't certainty. Well, I guess the clarity is just this inner knowing. It's like, this has been on my heart for a long time, like from when we were younger, or like, I mean, it could have happened recently, just that fire that's like, okay, like my trip last year, like I didn't know that was in the plan for 2025. And then suddenly it was like, there was that knowing, this is what I need to do. And it doesn't make sense, but it doesn't have to make sense. It makes sense as we walk along the path. And I think that's,
sure.
I mean, maybe what we're trying to get at here is like, I feel like there's a lot of men who are just a bit stuck, and they're going through the motions, and they don't feel needed, and they don't feel like they have a purpose, and they're just going through the motions, right? And it's like, well, when we silence all the noise, when we create space, when we connect to the things that give us some sense of meaning or peace, like what is that knowing? What comes up in those moments? And it's like, yeah, like I've had friends. I had a mate in Sydney, like we've known each other for 15 years. And for years and years and years, he was like, I think you just need to go on a trip. Like, I think you just need to get out of your environment and go and do something different. Just go exploring, see the world through new eyes. He was a big traveler. And I think for a long time, even though I knew he was right, I would challenge that with the thoughts that, well, he's just addicted to traveling, and that's all he knows, and that's the only answer that he can offer me, is that's the solution. But it was that knowing. And I think, maybe there's something in that of like surrounding ourselves with people who will keep us accountable, like, and people who know us, so that when we start to veer off, the course of our true nature, they're like, hey man, like I think this is something that would be important to you. In the absence of knowing that ourselves, like what does our environment do to support us and bring us back to that authentic self? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's why it's so important for spaces like what we're building here. It's a tribe. It's your allies who are willing to share the space with you and hold you accountable in some cases, but also just be that supporting role, holding the space. It's a great point.
Because that's what we wanted as kids, right? Like we wanted to go out and explore and adventure, but we also wanted that place to come back to where there were people who knew us, people who loved us, people who understood, people who weren't going to judge the outcome. And without that, it's hard to take the leap. So you're probably right. Like for men who are out there just like flailing around by themselves, like this could be a space, but there's countless spaces out there, and it's just finding one that resonates. And if it resonates, great. If not, also okay. Just like remain open to finding that space. So I am content with where this conversation's gone, given the challenges at the beginning. What would your predominant takeaway be if you were to summarize?
I got to go back to the keto fortune cookies. No, I'm just joking. I'm joking.
So Lincoln buy pre-register Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah. Keto misfortune cookies.
Fails.
Those who take the lead.
Might be more of a challenge on that one.
Yeah. Let's see. I don't know. I think it's all a takeaway for me. It's all good stuff, and it's an ongoing narrative. Not all of these conversations have a key takeaway. It's just good stuff.
Good takeaway. There's no takeaway. Have you ever sat down I get anxious when I'm meeting someone for the first time, or even like someone that I've known, and you know that you want to ask them a question. And we're talking about mentoring the other day. And sometimes you go there and you're having a good conversation, and then suddenly there's just, you just get like, and it's getting comfortable with silence, but sometimes I'll just run out of things to say and they won't be saying anything. And then I'm like, shit. And it's like, I feel the burden of responsibility to keep the conversation going. So maybe it's just space, right? It's being comfortable to sit in the space when you don't know what the next question to ask is, or you don't know what answer you're trying to find, but just to be in a space where you know you've got each other's back.
Yeah, agreed.
I think maybe that's what I take away. Being comfortable when you just
it's like the thing we were talking about with the fire. The reason I think that as men we love a fire so much is because we can just sit around it and talk about deep shit and stare at the fire without making eye contact. And then when there's nothing to say, we just look back at the fire.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that when because I'm looking after a dog at the moment. So if I'm like at a cafe and they're talking to someone and I've got the dog with me, I can just engage with the dog, give it a little pat, need some attention, think of something to say, and then come back to the conversation.
That's fair. Dogs have some usefulness. It can be great for a single dude ready to pick up a woman. It can be great for deferring conversation. It can be great for many things.
That'll be the soundbite.
Yeah.
Dogs have some usefulness. And for more inspirational animal-related quotes, tune to the next episode.
Hi. Yep.
Sweet.
All right. Till next time, stare into the fire, but not too close. And we'll see you there. Was the question about what was the question? So I'm pretty lost at this point, to be totally honest.